Welcome to the Skeptic Zone, the podcast from Australia for science and reason.
Hello and welcome to the Skeptic Zone, episode number 396 for the 22nd of May 2016. Richard Saunders here with you from Sydney, Australia. And what a bumper edition of the Skeptic Zone we have for you this week. Three really interesting reports, I'm sure you'll agree. We're going to kick off with an interview with the Australian Sex Party. Oh yes, Dr Meredith Doig from the Australian Sex Party. Now, normally the Skeptic Zone sort of steers clear of politics, but in this case we're going to make a big exception because the Australian Sex Party put out a rather good, well-crafted and quite devastating media release, a reply to Meryl Dorey of the Australian Vaccination Skeptics Network. So we'll be chatting to Meredith Doig, Dr Meredith Doig from the Australian Sex Party, all about that, and their policies in general, which appear to me to be rather based in science and evidence. Following that, it's the return of Dr Rachie Reports, who will be reporting on supplements. Now, these are the sort of things you can buy in most pharmacies in Australia and other countries too. Fish oils and the vitamin supplements and all this sort of stuff. And as you'll discover with Dr. Rachie, just because they're on the shelves of a pharmacy doesn't necessarily mean you can trust them. Then to round off the show, it's the Raw Skeptic Report. Heidi Robertson with a very interesting and detailed report looking into the, what shall we say, the rash of chiropractors entering hospitals to manipulate the spines of newborn babies. Crazy, but true. So this is one of those episodes of the Skeptic Zone where I would like you to tell your friends, relatives, enemies, anybody. Now, in the past week, I think I'm still sort of coming down from this. I went to see our reporter Maynard and the Mad Club. This is when Maynard turns into a DJ. And if you go to the Skeptic Zone Facebook page or the notes for this week's episode, you'll see a little video I made of DJ Maynard in action with the Mad Club. Goodness me, if we could hook Maynard up to the national grid, I don't think this country would have any energy problems. What a performer, what a performer. Maynard.com.au to find out more, but he was simply one of the best DJs I've seen live in action. It's really the first time I've really seen Maynard do the DJ work for the big crowd at a nightclub. It was fantastic. And don't forget, you can see me talk on Saturday in the Blue Mountains at Paracon. I'll be giving a talk about the $1 million challenge and the $100,000 challenge here in this country for anybody who can prove any paranormal or supernatural ability. Just check out the website or Google Paracon Australia. And also on the 4th of June, the Australian Skeptics are having a dinner meeting here in Sydney, and you can find out more at skeptics.com.au. We have somebody claiming to be psychic, I think, coming along, and then I'll be talking about the tricks, some of the psychic tricks of the trade. Should be a very interesting night. But now it's time for me to run downstairs and make sure those two Skeptic Zone cats, Henrietta and Maud, have their dinner. What will it be tonight? Tuna in gravy, maybe? Or maybe some dry kibbles. I don't know. I'm going to run downstairs and make sure they're okay while I'm doing that. I hope you enjoy the Skeptic Zone. And joining me now from Melbourne is the lead Senate candidate for Victoria for the Australian Sex Party, Dr Meredith Doig. Hello, Meredith.
Hi, Richard. How are you?
I'm pretty well. I'm doing really well. I'm very pleased to talk with you. We do know each other. We have bumped into each other from time to time at various skeptical, rational sort of events over the years.
That's right.
And the Australian Sex Party has been on the Skeptic Zone before. It was my pleasure 8 years ago to interview Fiona Patton when the whole thing was very new. Before we get into the reason we're chatting, can you tell our listeners a little bit about the Australian Sex Party? I mean, what a title for a party, huh?
Well, it's a bit of a two-edged sword, actually. A lot of people find it a bit confronting, the name. People I speak to sort of say, oh, you've got to change the name. But then, on the other hand, it gets us noticed. And the origin of the name was that Fiona and her partner Robbie, who are the founders of the Australian Sex Party, used to work with Don Chipp in Canberra. Don Chipp, the famous founder or rebel from the Liberal Party and founder of the Australian Democrats.
Right.
And when Fiona and Robbie were thinking of setting up a political party, his advice was, well, for heaven's sake, call it something memorable. And so they did. So whether or not, we might morph the name into something else in the future, it's a bit of an open question, but I encourage anybody who's listening to this to send us in ideas for a better name. There you go. There's a challenge.
There's a challenge. It's hard to think of a better name, actually. Come and join the Sex Party.
Yes.
And just briefly, the website, and we'll refer to this soon, is sexparty.org.au. Mm-hmm. But the reason, as listeners might know, I mean, the Skeptic Zone really doesn't dabble too much into politics. We'll leave that for other people to look at, who to vote for one way or the other. But we're happy to give you a chance to have a chat with us because just recently we saw the Sex Party put up a reply to Meryl Dory of the Australian Vaccination Skeptics Network. And for the benefit of our listeners, we'll just play that or read that press release out now. Published at www.sexparty.org.au. ASXP, Australian Sex Party, responds to vaccination skeptics. The Australian Sex Party was contacted by notorious anti-vaccination campaigner and science denier Meryl Dory, asking for our position on, quote, both no jab, no pay / no play legislation and the right of Australian citizens to make free and informed health choices for their families without financial penalties or discrimination, end quote. Here is our response. Dear Ms. Dory, I am pleased to respond on behalf of the Australian Sex Party to your request for information on our position on vaccination issues. I'd like to request that my response be published in full and unedited on both your website and social media. Please do share it widely. The Australian Sex Party believes in individual liberty and the freedom to make choices regarding your own life. With this freedom, however, comes responsibility. As members of our community and beneficiaries of the privileges provided by the community, we have an obligation to ensure that exercising our freedom does not put others at undue risk. No jab, no pay. The federal government's no jab, no pay measures aim to reduce the spread of preventable diseases, knowingly and willingly putting one's child and others at risk of dangerous and preventable diseases is irresponsible, reckless, and antisocial. The Australian Sex Party does not believe that those who choose not to participate in our collective enterprise of disease prevention should be rewarded with tax benefits or rebates. In Australia, parents are not forced to vaccinate their children. Those who contribute to the broader community's health by vaccinating their children or have genuine medical exemptions receive a contribution from the community in the form of FTB, a end-of-year supplement, child care benefit, and child care rebate payments. The Australian Sex Party supports this public health measure. No jab, no play. Victoria's no jab, no play laws were introduced to protect public health. The Australian Sex Party believes that if a parent wishes to use our community's early childhood education and care services, they should be expected to play their part in protecting the community from preventable diseases. Those who choose to endanger the health of others by not vaccinating their children should not be welcome to do so in an early childhood care setting. the right of Australian citizens to make free and informed health choices for their families without financial penalty or discrimination. The Australian Sex Party supports the right of Australian citizens, and others, to make free and informed health choices for their families. The party does not, however, believe that going against the best scientific information available represents an informed health choice. The anti-vaccination movement encourages parents to, quote, do your own research, end quote. However, doing, quote, research, end quote, by reading web pages is not comparable to actual research done by scientists who work hard to protect us all from dangerous and debilitating disease. The Australian Sex Party rejects the insinuation that expecting all parents to participate in preventing diseases is a form of discrimination. The safety and efficacy of vaccination is not an area of scientific controversy. The claim that governments and scientists are all conspiring to mislead us for some nefarious purpose is absurd and irresponsible. The dangers of complications from vaccines are much lower than the dangers posed by childhood diseases such as measles. The claims of the anti-vaccination movement have been thoroughly debunked. Choosing not to vaccinate your children amounts to medical neglect. This is a serious ethical issue. Whilst it can be tempting to imagine that we parents have access to some special kind of knowledge that somehow eludes the scientific community, it's just not so. We at the Australian Sex Party would like to encourage parents who are questioning what's right for their children to follow the advice of the scientific and medical communities rather than charlatans and conspiracy theorists. Regards, Darren Austin, Senior Policy Advisor, Australian Sex Party. Wow, Meredith, that's pretty powerful stuff. You must be very proud that that's come out of the Australian Sex Party.
Well, yes, it is, but it's, I have to say, not the only good thing that's come out of the Australian Sex Party. I mean, we were the first party, for example, that called for a royal commission into institutional child abuse, or really child abuse by religious organisations, and that has come to pass.
That's fantastic, yeah. And I noticed that, I mean, there's a strong civil liberties theme, but you're not just a one-trick pony, the Sex Party, is it? I mean, you're into all sorts of things. You have policies on tax and religion, on sex education, on the clergy going into schools, on sniffer dogs, clean energy.
A relatively succinct way of summarising the range of our policies is that we are unashamedly socially progressive, hence we support marriage equality without a plebiscite. Let's just get it done. Legalising voluntary assisted dying and protecting access to safe legal abortion. So we're unashamedly socially progressive. Economically, we would say that we are prudent. Because we're a civil liberties and somewhat libertarian party, we're in favour of more rather than less freedom for adults. But with that freedom obviously comes responsibility. So, and we're in favour of overall of smaller government rather than larger government, less bureaucracy rather than more bureaucracy. So socially progressive, economically prudent, and environmentally, we're not ideological environmentally. We tend to be a party that unashamedly looks to the science and the evidence in our environmental policies. So, for example, we are obviously committed to a clean energy future, but we wouldn't rule out a nuclear factor in a clean energy future. We don't think we've got enough information yet to know whether or not that would be viable or make sense for Australia, but we wouldn't rule it out on ideological grounds.
I think that's a very good attitude, and I think a lot of skeptics would identify with many of the policies of the Australian Sex Party. Again, you can check those out, folks, at sexparty.org.au. Things that I think many skeptics would be in tune with, like dying with dignity, for example.
Another one that might be of interest is our policy on drug law reform. And I hasten to say that despite the fact that we use a marijuana leaf as our symbol for that drug reform, what we're not saying is open slather, let's just let everybody use whatever licit or illicit drugs they want. What we are saying is the war on drugs has clearly failed and has been incredibly expensive. So let's stop hitting our heads against a brick wall. If a policy or a strategy is failing, then let's try something different. And in fact, there are different strategies to trying to deal with the harm that might be caused by drugs. Portugal comes to mind, for example. Overall, we're in favour of decriminalisation, but regulation of drugs.
It certainly sounds like you've given, you personally, of course, but the party in general has given all these matters a great deal of thought. And I can't help noticing and detecting the very strong science and evidence theme through your policies.
Absolutely. And it's one of the things that really attracted me to the Sex Party. As you would know, Richard, I've been president of the Rationalist Society for Australia for a number of years. Before the last federal election, the Rationalists ran a secular scorecard in which we assessed the policies and public pronouncements of a number of political parties against our 10-point plan for a secular Australia. Unsurprisingly, the Secular Party of Australia came out very well, but so did the Sex Party, and that's how I got sort of beyond the name to really read the policies of the Sex Party and discovered that they overlap almost perfectly with the policies that many in the free thought movement have been pursuing for a number of years. And so that was how I sort of got to know the Sex Party. And I think, like a lot of people, the name was a bit of an impediment. But if you can get beyond the name and actually read the policies, they do make a lot of sense to a lot of people.
Oh, we've had this problem with the term skeptics since forever. Because everybody and their dog likes to use the term skeptic to promote themselves. For example, moon landing skeptics and climate change skeptics drives us crazy.
The sort of things that the conspiracy theorists like to call themselves.
Well, Meredith, look, thank you so much for sparing some time to chat to the Skeptic Zone. Folks, as you know, we're not a political podcast. We don't push politics one way or the other particularly. But in this instance, I was certainly pleased to chat to you, Meredith, because of the policies of the Sex Party, specifically because of that excellent response to Meryl Dorey. And folks, if you want to read that response for yourself and find out more about the Australian Sex Party, maybe you can find out if they're for you. sexparty.org.au is the address to head for. But for now, Dr Meredith Doig from the Australian Sex Party, thank you very much.
Thanks, Richard. Great to talk to you.
Richard.
Oh, hi, Trish. Would you like a coffee?
Yeah, thanks. What are you working on?
I'm trying to come up with a new promo to play on the Skeptic Zone.
Who's it for?
The Good Thinking Society in the UK. Michael Marshall, Simon Singh, Laura Thomas and that crowd.
Oh, yeah, I know them. Oh. They've been doing some great work investigating veterinary homeopathy.
Veterinary homeopathy? What, sugar pills for cows?
I know, right? And also they're looking at some of the dodgy medical advice given by UK chiropractors.
I'll mention all that in the promo. Now, their website is goodthinkingsociety.org.
And they've recently been reporting on the resurgence of faith healer Peter Popoff.
Peter Popoff. Great. Okay, look, thanks for that. It gives me something good to think about. PsyCon Las Vegas. No, it's not an illusion. PsyCon is coming to Vegas, and you're not just hearing things. For too long, skeptics have been wandering the desert, parched and aimless, wondering when will they find an oasis? But just on the horizon, hope beckons. At last, a chance for critical thinkers from around the world to celebrate with the brightest minds and biggest personalities in science and skepticism. It's no mirage. It's PsyCon 2016, and this time it's in Vegas. October the 27th to the 30th, come to the Excalibur Hotel and Casino in Las Vegas, where brilliant speakers will make the City of Light truly shine with Skeptic stars like evolutionary biologist Richard Dawkins, science education champion Eugenie Scott, SETI astronomer Jill Tarter, and many more to be announced. And yes, James the Amazing Randi will be there too. SciCon 2016 is a production of the Committee for Skeptical Inquiry, the people who bring you the Skeptical Inquirer magazine, the group that began organised skepticism a generation ago. And what better location for a conference of skeptics than a city full of illusions? Don't wait. Unlike claims of celebrity psychics, conspiracy theorists and alt-med hucksters, this is no illusion. SciCon is real. Register now at www.sciconference.org. That's CSI conference.org.
Now it's time for Dr. Rachie Reports with Dr. Rachael Dunlop.
Hello listeners, and welcome to Dr. Rachie Reports, back after quite a long absence due to science primarily. This week, a program that aired in the USA, a production of PBS and the New York Times, aired in Australia, concerning supplements and whether they're worth taking. Now, in Australia, the vitamin and supplement industry is big business, and an estimated 75% of the population reportedly use some form of complementary medicines, whether this be supplements and vitamins, ranging to other things like aromatherapy, homeopathy, chiropractic, anything along those lines. But the show that aired on Monday on the ABC presented evidence to show that some vitamin supplements and protein powders don't work at best, and at worst, they can actually cause harm. So this investigation looked into the complex issues surrounding supplements in North America in particular, and it was an eye-opening report that detailed a web of lobbying and legislation that's designed to protect the industry in the USA, but which ultimately leaves consumers at risk. Now, the issue of supplements causing harm was covered up front with a group of patients in Hawaii who suffered liver damage following the ingestion of a dietary supplement, and this led to many of them requiring transplants. At the other extreme was the revelation that up to 60% of supplements analysed independently for the active ingredient didn't contain what was stated on the label. Now, this study was done in a random sample of 44 popular herbal supplements purchased from North American stores and analysed for their DNA fingerprints. Now, in 1/3 of these sampled, they showed outright substitution. So not only was the active ingredient not there, something else was in its place, and there was no trace of what was advertised on the bottle. Others contained undisclosed fillers like soybean, wheat, and rice flour. Ginkgo biloba supplements, which were promoted as memory enhancers, were mixed with fillers, black walnuts, and this is potentially a deadly hazard for people that have nut allergies and don't know that they're buying nuts in their supplement. So these findings make it very difficult to have any faith in the usefulness of supplements or the safety of them. But even in the case of unadulterated supplements, that is those that do have active ingredient, scientists and doctors warned that in the absence of a medically diagnosed deficiency, we are still taking too many of these things. A recent study also reported that taking extra vitamins and minerals can actually do more harm than good, and in some cases may even increase your risk of getting cancer rather than reduce it. So in addition, some commercially available preparations of fish oil, which is supposed to be helpful in reducing the risk of cardiovascular disease, were actually shown to be off. So they were rancid, they had oxidized as a result of poor processing procedures. And this, in fact, means that you're taking a substance that can trigger inflammatory pathways in your cells, doing the exact opposite of what this supplement is supposed to do. So by now, if you're thinking, well, you know, what happens in North America doesn't really affect me here in Australia, you might be wrong, because herbal supplements can be bought online, of course, and since 2011 have been linked to at least 6 Australian organ transplants. Now, this includes the recent case of a Perth man who was given 2 weeks to live and required an emergency liver transplant after taking a protein powder that contained a green tea extract and a supplement containing Garcinia cambogia. Now, such was his emergency that he had no choice but to accept a liver infected with hepatitis B. So now he's not only taking immunosuppressive drugs to maintain the transplant, but he's also taking drugs for hepatitis B infection. Now, Australian regulatory authorities responded to this by saying that they're continuing to investigate this report and the results will be made public if there is sufficient evidence of a safety issue. I would say that there probably is. But then again, Australia's regulations when it comes to supplements are also woefully inadequate. So first of all, if a product is intended to be used as a supplement, it must be listed with the Therapeutic Goods Administration, but the process of getting it on that list only requires you to fill out an online form, select from a list of pre-approved ingredients, and pre-approved means that they've been tested for safety in isolation and they're considered low risk. And then you must state that you hold information to substantiate the product's claims. You don't have to present that evidence, you just have to say you have it. Now, what is missing from this picture? Well, you might have already picked it up, is that testing of each batch of supplement for the concentration and safety of the indicated ingredients does not occur before the supplement ends up on the shelf in your pharmacy. What's also missing is checks that the claims made on the bottle can be substantiated prior to the product going on sale. So whilst there are compliance checks that happen randomly and on a percentage of the products that are out on the shelves, only a fraction of the total products listed will actually get checked. And each time this does happen, dozens of products are cancelled for reasons ranging from unsubstantiated claims on the label to unacceptable quality to unacceptable safety or the fact that they just don't work. So if we look at the most recent compliance review done by the TGA, covering January 2015 to February 2016, we find that 74% of products checked for compliance failed. 74% of products you can go and buy off your pharmacy shelf now failed compliance checks by the TGA. Now, this was for various reasons, including labelling and advertising, but also for evidence, lack of evidence for the product's claims. And also, in around 10 to 20% of cases, this was to do with quality of the product itself. So this is not a small amount of fail in terms of compliance. And can you imagine if this happened to big pharma products? There would be a scandal. People would be furious. But because it's supplements and they're warm and fuzzy and they're natural, therefore they must be safe, nobody seems to care. And this also doesn't even cover supplements that are not listed on the Australian Register of Therapeutic Goods. So some traditional Chinese medicine products are not listed on the ARTG, and these have been found to be contaminated through studies with pharmaceuticals such as paracetamol, antihistamines, antibiotics, blood thinners, as well as significant levels of toxic heavy metals such as arsenic, cadmium and lead. So meanwhile, although Australian supplement manufacturers are required to adhere to good manufacturing practice, their sites are also inspected and listed by the TGA, but they're not required to prove that their products are safe or effective. So consumers can easily be lulled into a false sense of security here, especially if a product is stamped with an official looking number, which it is if it's on the ARTG, and sold beside evidence-based medicines in a pharmacy. But consumers should be careful because it's not the case that just because there's a government number that this product A works, B has been tested. So like in North America, in Australia, we also have a vocal supplement lobby with connections to powerful people in powerful places. And this means that in some cases, we're not putting consumer rights above profits. Until that happens, we should steer clear of over-the-counter supplements unless you have a medically diagnosed deficiency in which your doctor prescribes you a supplement. Buyer beware. Now, if you would like to read this report, it has been published on the Conversation website under my name, Rachael Dunlop. And if you'd like to see the PBS New York Times investigation, it will be up on ABC iView for the next couple of weeks. In North America, it actually aired in January this year, so you should be able to find it somewhere, maybe even on the tubes. And until next time, this has been Dr. Rachie Reports.
Quackwatch, your guide to quackery, health fraud, and intelligent decisions, operated by Stephen Barrett, MD. Quackwatch is now an international network of people who are concerned about health-related frauds, myths, fads, fallacies, and misconduct. Its primary focus is on quackery-related information that is difficult or impossible to get elsewhere. Articles on quackery include quackery. How should it be defined? How it sells? 26 ways to spot it. How it harms cancer patients. 7 warning signs for bogus science. Why health professionals become quacks, and many more, including in-depth looks at acupuncture, chiropractic, homeopathy, naturopathy, and much more. Visit www.quackwatch.com.
It's the Raw Skeptic Report with Heidi Robertson.
Hello everyone. This week I'm reporting on a follow-up of the Melbourne chiropractor who manipulated the spine of a 4-day-old baby, filmed it, put it on YouTube, where it subsequently went viral and was reported on worldwide. On May the 16th, 2016, the Sydney Morning Herald ran a story titled Chiropractor Ian Rossborough Temporarily Banned from Treating Children by Julia Madu and Nick Toscano. Quote, the Chiropractic Board of Australia, the CBA, has ordered Parkdale chiropractor Ian Rossborough not to treat patients under the age of 18 while it investigates his conduct. In a statement on the Australian Health Practitioner Regulation Agency's website, Dr Rossborough has entered an undertaking not to treat babies, children and teenagers during that time. End quote. His ban will remain in place until June the 2nd, and it will certainly be interesting what the outcome of the investigation will be and how it may impact on the treatment of babies by chiropractors in the future. Another quote from the article. Last month, Fairfax Media revealed the Royal Australian College of General Practitioners had told its members to not refer patients to chiropractors and was calling for the federal government and private health insurers to stop paying them for questionable treatments. At the time, President of the College of GPs, Dr Frank Jones, said there was no evidence to support chiropractic treatment of infant spines, which appeared cruel in the video. He said it may have put the baby at risk of fractures and other soft tissue damage. You could rupture ligaments, muscles, and even bone if they have underlying bone problems, the GP obstetrician said. Health Minister Jill Hennessy called for an urgent crackdown on chiropractors performing unproven and potentially unsafe procedures on infants. End quote. As reported on the Skeptic Zone, Studio 10, an Australian television show, had Ian Rossborough on their program recently to defend his treatment of the 4-day-old baby. Studio 10, after the CBA sanctioning of Rossborough, ran an update with panellist Joe Hildebrand not holding back on what he thought of Rossborough's suspension. Here is a recording of, firstly, part of Rossborough's defence and Hildebrand's subsequent statements.
Dr Rossborough joined Studio 10 earlier this month in his only TV interview and had this to say about the viral video.
What's happening here is that you're not actually, you don't know what you're seeing. The pressure of my finger is just the end of my finger, just a fingertip, and it's directed to a very specific part of the child's dysfunctional spine. It's not putting a force in the body that the baby can't handle, and it'd be a lot more dangerous to leave that joint in the wrong position. And, you know, we're trying to shine the light on this. I was trying to be I guess, transparent. We didn't have to post it, but we wanted to educate the public that sometimes just one specific correction in the right spot can make a massive difference to the health of a baby and also to the life of the parents.
I don't think the video looks right, and I don't think he sounds credible. And I'm very glad that he's been suspended, and it'll be interesting to see what happens next month when the chiropractors board themselves, the industry body, look into it. The industry body itself, even if you accept that chiropractic is a legitimate form of treatment, their own industry board has said that this is not right. They have not endorsed this practice.
And has said so on its website.
And has said so on its website. So he's even outside the sphere of normal.
So the outcome of the inquiry will be extremely interesting.
It'll be extremely interesting.
Rossborough's chiropractic Facebook page is no longer online, and he's only just removed the many YouTube videos he linked to from his clinic's website. This week, more troubling revelations have emerged in the media regarding chiropractors treating babies. This is from the Sydney Morning Herald, May the 19th, by Kate Orbison and Rania Spooner. Chiropractors have been caught allegedly sneaking into Australian maternity wards to treat newborn babies, publicly flouting their own regulations. The behaviour has been slammed by other practitioners who say they are fed up with a minority tarnishing the profession. New South Wales chiropractor Grant Bond allegedly snuck into Wollongong Private Hospital to treat a 3-day-old baby, claiming his touch allowed the infant to have his first poo. Similar allegations have been levelled at a Victorian chiropractor. A photograph posted to the Facebook page of Dr Bond's clinic in April shows the chiropractor with his hands on the back of the newborn held by his mother in one of the hospital's maternity ward suites. It was an awesome experience checking the baby's spine for the first time, Dr Bond wrote in the post, which has since been removed. As I gently laid my hands on his spine, without even waking, he did his first poo. The chief executive of Wollongong Private, David Crowe, said Dr Bond had entered the ward without the permission of the hospital or the treating doctor. Chiropractors are banned from treating patients inside a healthcare facility without the institution's permission. The chiropractor appears to have presented to the hospital as a visitor, Mr Crowe said. Fairfax Media has learnt a formal complaint has been made to the New South Wales Health Watchdog against Dr Bond over the matter. Dr Bond has been contacted repeatedly for comment. A formal complaint has also been made to APRA against Melbourne chiropractor Bianca Beaumont after she published a photograph online that the complainant alleged shows her treating a newborn in hospital. While the location of the photograph is unknown and Dr Beaumont did not respond to requests for comment, 2 of Melbourne's major birthing hospitals said they would not allow external chiropractors to treat babies on their wards. On her website, Dr Beaumont's clinic spruiked the service with the line, "Our family wellness clients enjoy having our chiropractors visit them at home or in hospital to have the newest members of their family checked." The content was deleted after her office was contacted by Fairfax Media. In a blog post on Tuesday, Dr Beaumont said her profession was under fire from social and the mainstream media after a video of the baby's back being cracked went viral. While the nature of this adjustment is something I am not comfortable with personally, I am horrified to think that this may result in chiropractic care for children becoming illegal, she wrote. The Chiropractic Board of Australia confirmed it was investigating recent complaints against several chiropractors, but does not discuss individual cases. There are no excuses. All chiropractors must meet the requirements of the law, and if they refuse, we can take disciplinary action or prosecute, a spokeswoman said. It is all very well for the CBA to make these statements, but can the public trust them to follow through? Let's see what their track record of disciplinary action has been like so far. This is from the Reasonable Hank blog. Quote, in 2013, a story broke regarding chiropractors who were bragging of sneaking into hospitals. In November 2013, the then president of the Chiropractors Association of Australia, Laurie Tassell, tore his members a collective new one in his president's report, published in the official periodical of the Chiropractors Association of Australia called The Australian Chiropractor. This quote from Laurie Tassell. The unethical use of websites to claim cures for conditions that cannot be supported by research evidence continues to be a major problem for the profession. At the time of the National Development Forum, the CBA had received 155 new complaints regarding the inappropriate use of websites. This is an issue that continues to astound me. Maybe when some of you receive substantial fines or suspension, you will understand the significance of your selfish and unprofessional actions. The damage to the profession from the unprofessional use of social media, personal attacks on chiropractors who might hold different views to you, bragging about entering hospitals without permission, and posting photos with well-known speakers openly critical of vaccination are not acceptable. Complaints to the CBA have been lodged, and some of you will be subject to disciplinary action. Once something is posted on the net, it is in the public domain. Private or closed sites are being accessed and trolled. End quote. Back to the Sydney Morning Herald article. Quote, at least 7 chiropractors have been sanctioned by the Chiropractic Board for treating newborns in hospitals since July 2015, including the President-elect of the Chiropractors Association of Australia, Helen Alavaki. End quote. However, as Reasonable Hank points out in his blog, there are many more that have not been sanctioned for the same offences, which are breaches of several sections of the CBA's Code of Conduct for chiropractors. Once again, back to the Sydney Morning Herald article. Quote, a woman who gave birth in John Hunter Hospital in 2008 recounted a female chiropractor sneaking into the maternity ward to adjust the newborn of a mother who lay in the bed next to her. Her bub would have been about 12 hours old, and she and her husband had a visitor that they were trying to talk all hush-hush to, said the woman who asked not to be named. The chiro adjusted the baby, which the baby did not seem to enjoy, and she told the mum that vaginal birth was incredibly traumatic for the baby and that every newborn should be adjusted within 24 hours of birth to make sure they are aligned, she said. The mother said the chiro had to sneak in like some sort of criminal and pretend to be a visitor because the hospital won't let her do her work. General Manager of John Hunter Hospital, Debbie Bradley, said, this is not a practice that John Hunter is aware of, and it is not endorsed within our facility. The President of Chiropractic Australia, Associate Professor Rodney Bonello, said many chiropractors were horrified and embarrassed by the cases. If there's not hospital approval, then that's a travesty and should never be acceptable, Associate Professor Bonello said. The profession has come under a lot of scrutiny, some of it is deserved. Chiropractic Association of Australia Chief Executive Matthew Fisher said any practitioner who provided care to a patient in a healthcare facility without permission was in breach of the Code of Conduct for chiropractors. A Facebook page supporting Australian chiropractors who treat babies has been inundated with photographs featuring overseas-based chiropractors treating infants and young children. The Australian media seems to be tied tight to the medical community and the pharmaceutical industry, said Europe-based chiropractor Lynn McAvenia in a video post. End quote. Also extremely concerning is the anti-vaccination stance many of these chiropractors openly hold. For example, Ian Rossborough's clinic spruiked the anti-vaccination book Melanie's Marvellous Measles on their Facebook page. There are too many more examples to give here, But for a thorough examination of the extent of this chiropractic anti-vaccination problem, Google Reasonable Hank's blog with the words vaccination and chiropractors, and you will find yourself some very disturbing reading. What needs to be answered is where the chiropractors are getting their anti-vaccination stance from. Is it from lecturers at the universities they attended? Or is it later on, once they've graduated, perhaps in ongoing professional development units? We need to know this in order to stop the problem at its source, rather than attempting to limit the damage once it has already occurred. And the same can be said for the treatment of children by chiropractors for things like autism, bedwetting, ear infections and colic. There is just no evidence base for it. And what of the dubious surrogate muscle testing that some chiropractors are offering, whereby the baby is held by a parent and the chiropractor performs applied kinesiology to the parent to find subluxations in the baby? How is this happening? So back to what the CBA is or isn't doing about the problem. Again, from Reasonable Hank. In its March 7th, 2016 statement, the CBA stated the following regarding misleading claims still being made by chiropractors. Quote, "Of particular concern is the number of treatment claims in advertising relating to infants and children. Claims suggesting that manual therapy for spinal problems can assist with general wellness and or benefit a variety of paediatric syndromes and organic conditions are not supported by satisfactory evidence. This includes claims relating to developmental and behavioural disorders, ADHD, autistic spectrum disorders, asthma, infantile colic, bedwetting, ear infections and digestive problems. And in the case of the care of pregnant patients, chiropractors are not trained to apply any direct treatment to an unborn child and should not deliver any treatment to the unborn child. Chiropractic care must not be represented or provided as treatment to the unborn child as an obstetric breech correction technique." End quote. So, we have a large number of chiropractors who are A, advertising non-evidence-based treatments in breach of their own guidelines, B, allowing patient testimonials on their social media sites, also a breach of their advertising guidelines, C, entering hospitals under false pretences, posing as family members or friends, D, entering hospitals without the necessary accreditations, permissions, and probably relevant insurances to treat babies, E, demonstrating a complete disregard and lack of respect for the concept of open communication and collaboration between multidisciplinary healthcare providers, and F, spruiking anti-vaccination nonsense and other conspiracy theories on their social media business pages. In short, this subset of chiropractors appear to be well and truly out of control and are brazenly continuing to give the bird to their regulatory bodies. We wait in anticipation of how those regulatory bodies will respond. Thanks everyone. This has been Heidi Robertson from the Northern Rivers Vaccination Supporters. You can find us on Facebook, on Twitter at NRVaxSupporters, and on our website nrvs.info as well as Wikipedia. Till next time.
On maynard.com.au. It's time to get on the stump. It's bunga bunga. Hey, tick all the boxes below the line because it's bunga bunga. Election special number 27.
People say, who's going to win? I say politics is the winner.
We are right behind the Pirate Party. Stick a screen down that end and put, I don't know, a very moving episode of Different Strokes maybe.
Now the world don't move to the beat of just one drum.
Consider Bunga Bunga 27 as a podcast audio version of going off on that fishing boat in the scene from One Throw of the Cuckoo's Nest. It's me and Tim on a boat, not knowing what we're doing.
Having no idea what we're doing, we're having a great time.
And you can both call us doctors.
Hello, Maynard.
You're listening to Bunga Bunga 27. Bunga Bunga, the nation's most collectible podcast.
That's right, collect them all. We'd all like to be Pikachu.
There's the new one, Bunga Chew. Let's open the crank mail.
Crank mail, crank mail.
We're just going to have to wait for Hillary Clinton to drive off in her tractor as she's making a bit of noise there, revving it.
Move along, Clinton.
She's finally gotten the word there. She's just gone into the bottle shop, got herself a bottle of Sambuca, which she's drinking from openly as she drives off in her tractor. Go, Hillary!
Go, Hillary! Bill still loves you.
On maynard.com.au. AU!
Thank you for listening to the Skeptic Zone. And if you really thought these reports this week were worthwhile, then I suggest and I ask you to tell your friends. Spread the word. I think this is a particularly good episode with 3 very interesting reports. Thanks to our wonderful reporters this week, Heidi and Dr. Rachie, who really show they're the cream of the crop, I think. All my reporters, I think, are the cream of the crop. They're all wonderful. Coming up on the show next week, we're going to have a report about Belle Gibson. Now, this was a woman who claimed that she was using natural therapies and nice unicorn thoughts to cure her brain cancer here in Australia. We'll also be reporting on the Paracon. This is the paranormal convention that I'll be attending pretty soon, in about 6 days. I wonder what Maynard will get up to there. Well, I can't see into the future, but I can guess. Now I'm starting to be worried. But for this week, this is Richard Saunders signing off from Sydney, Australia. You've been listening to the Skeptic Zone podcast. Visit our website at www.skepticzone.tv for contacts, an archive of all episodes since 2008, and our online store. Please support the Skeptic Zone by following us on Twitter @SkepticZone, liking us on Facebook, and leaving a review on iTunes. You can also show your support by subscribing via PayPal for as little as 99 cents a week. The Skeptic Zone is an independent production. The views and opinions expressed on the Skeptic Zone are not necessarily those of Australian Skeptics Inc. or any other skeptical organisation. One, two, three. Hello and welcome to the Skeptic Zone, episode number 396 for the 22nd. That was a cat jumping up onto my microphone stand, knocking everything over. Oh. Go on. Yeah, here's another one. What's this? Thank you, Maud. Thank you, Henny. The Australian Sex Party supports this public... The Australian... You caught me in the middle of a voiceover. Hello. No, I'm just doing a read for the Skeptic Zone this week. Yeah. No, cool. No, it's go. Hello.